Creepy things Indians used to do in the past. Welcome back, history enthusiasts. In today's video, we're going to delve into the creepy and mysterious practices that were once a part of Indian culture. From ancient rituals to beliefs in the supernatural, India has a rich history filled with intriguing and sometimes spine-chilling traditions. Join us as we explore some creepy things Indians used to do in the past. After the collapse of the Indus Valley Civilization, a new society formed with Arya kingdoms. The introduction of a new caste system came with new and different sections to divide people into it. Slowly and steadily, this society made and later broke a variety of sets of rules which turn out interesting to know. Today's India is totally opposite from what we are going to know. The Cannibal Monk, Aghoris. Aghoris' most striking practices is their association with death and the use of human skulls and bones. They believe that by confronting mortality and meditating among cremation pyres, they can achieve a higher state of consciousness and transcend the cycle of birth and death. Aghoris are also known for their controversial rituals, such as smearing their bodies with cremation ashes and consuming human flesh. It is important to note that these practices are not universally embraced or condoned by all Aghoris, as interpretations and practices vary among individuals. Concept of slavery. When Alexander's crusade arrived in India, the land mesmerized them very much, especially the northern plains and mountain range. He even thought of settling down in India. They were surprised to see that there was no slavery as it was in Greece. But there were some demons who were part of the people's life which still prevails today, the caste system. Even today it is the most terrible practice which traveled all the way through ancient India to modern India. Untouchables. Untouchables or Akhuts were the excluded part of the society of ancient India. These people were never accepted as a part of the Indian civilization. They were given the lowest of the lowest jobs to do, such as sanitizing toilets, cleaning the streets, cleaning animals remaining, and paying them lesser than the less, only enough for survival. Untouchables were not allowed to touch any people of other castes or communities. However, the upper classes had the authority to suppress and punish the untouchables. The upper caste had all the rights. They can beat, thrash, and do anything in the name of punishment. Sometimes, they can even hang the person who offended them. When Indus Valley Civilization came to its end, the Vedic period came into the light. People were then assigned professions based on their social status. But the untouchables were already at the end of the list of social statuses. Later, things became worse than worst. Swayamvar. Swayamvar was a practice that allowed women the freedom of choosing their life partner. However, later in most religious books, women were referred to as the possessions of their fathers, and only a father had the authority to take the final call on who will marry their daughters. Swayamvar was organized not less than as an auspicious ceremony where all the suitors will assemble and she, to be bride, will choose one out of them. This practice was most followed in royal and dignified families. The arrival of modern India took this freedom from daughters' hands and was given to their fathers. Sati Practice. Women's life in ancient India was trapped in another horrid practice that treated them as property, a thing. Not as an individual or person with their own identity. Before marriage, a girl is her father's property, and after marriage, the same woman is her husband's property. In ancient India, society had a very narrow-mindedness towards widows. For them, if a husband dies, it would cause an identity crisis for the wives. No choices were given to women. If a woman becomes a widow, she would have to give up on every pleasure that the world has to offer. No vibrant colored clothes, no good food. This led to the rise of a compulsory practice. With the death of the husband, the wife shall also be forcefully pushed into the burning pyre, screaming to be set in flames. The practice of sati emerged during the Gupta period between the years 320 CE and 550 CE. Even today, sati is practiced in some parts of Rajasthan. Initially, the practice of sati was confined to royal families and only later spread to the lower castes, becoming widely practiced among the entire society. Things only got worse during medieval times with the frequent invasions of Middle Eastern Islamic raiders and conquerors. They tried to mistreat, enslave, and forcefully convert Hindu widows of dead warriors, soldiers, generals, and kings alike. Even though this was an act of self-sacrifice, such incidents were used by religiously enthusiastic people to propagate and advocate the forced practice of sati. As many as 1,000 widows were burned alive every year in India and Nepal. Women of ancient India had only two options as an alternative to being married to a man. But calling these other ways of living an option is a bit of a stretch, because calling them options suggests that these women had an agency of choice, and that wasn't the case. Devadasa. God maids or devadasis were women who were forcibly married to an almighty at a young age by their parents. This institutional exploitation of women was aimed at socially and economically deprived families who were asked to send their adolescent daughters in service of the god, sometimes in return for a compensation fee. These girls were not allowed to marry normally, as they were supposedly married to the temple. What it means is that they were bound to serve the priests and inmates of the temple. However, they may ask, and sometimes such services would extend to the local lords and other influential people tied to the temple. Insane, isn't it? These women were slaves of the priests and priesthood and were exploited in every way imaginable from the day of their admission into the temple to their death. City brides, Nagar Vadus. Nagar Vadus were openly considered concubines, and this title of Nagar Vadu was generally held by the most beautiful and talented courtesan of the city. Beauty pageants were held to select the next city bride. Unlike a god maid, city bride was honored and revered among citizens of the city. However, she was still a prostitute. Her intimate services were ridiculously expensive, so that only the top brass of the city, generals, kings, and emperors, could only manage to afford her time. City brides would also perform music, dance, and other theatrical arts for the city at special ceremonies, events, and occasions. Amrapali, the mistress of Emperor Bimsar, was perhaps the most famous city bride in Indian history. These creepy practices from India's past remind us of the darker side of cultural beliefs and traditions. While some of these practices may still exist in some form today, it's essential to understand their historical context and the societal changes that have occurred over time. Thank you for joining us on this fascinating exploration of the creepy things Indians used to do in the past. If you found this video intriguing, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating insights into history's mysteries.